Okay, this is a response to Nick Dutch, and Nick, I want to tell you first and foremost, I genuinely appreciate you. I know this sounds corny, as a human being. I don't, unfortunately, I haven't been able to keep up on all your videos, but I noticed that you had commented on one of mine, and it's refreshing that you're keeping up on me, and so I had to naturally I wanted to see what you were talking about lately. I hope I never get a shake down and a dress down the way that Satanist got, because I would hate to get that from you. But I thought you were a little harsh on this idea of corporate greed and how the phrase is being used, and I wanted to voice my opinions on it. And not everything that I say is directed as a response to what you had said, but some of it is, and some of it isn't. So if you think that I don't think that I'm putting words in your mouth if I say something that is not totally congruent as a response, but some of it is as a response, and I'll try to make that clear. Okay. First of all, there have always been people against corporations for greed. As a matter of fact, as I understand it, there were people who were against corporate greed before there were corporations. Now, I know that sounds strange, so let me explain. Adam Smith and Thomas Jefferson both were very concerned that the free market and the invisible hand of the free market could very much be affected in a bad way by what was then called joint venture capitalism. And these joint venture capitalists, it was very clear that they would have a certain amount of power that they could affect the markets. Now, these were the predecessors of corporations. So, in essence, the very people who invented capitalism, in a sense, were anti-corporate. They understood the greed aspect of it. And throughout history, if you want to go to, I know this is a stretch, but, was it, that famous joke about Henry David Thoreau talking to Ralph Waldo Emerson in prison. The reason Thoreau was in prison was because he refused to pay his taxes because of slavery and of the way, I'm not sure about the American Indians, but I think it was slavery based. At any rate, that was clearly an issue about markets, because without the slaves, the markets couldn't function. So, slavery in a sense was, if you're, a big issue. So, and that's a bit of a stretch, but, throughout history, I'm sure you could always find people who saw that the corporations and the markets were about greed. When you look at, was it Slaughterhouse-Five? There was that book written about what was going on in the meat industry. Why? Once again, it's about profits. There have always been people who have put profits before people. So, because there's a bunch of youngsters who really had to grow into this position, and really had to come into it, and I don't think that they deserved your criticism, quite frankly. It sounds to me like what's happened most recently is there's been more consciousness about this. And even you admitted that there was corporate greed at all. There's been greed since forever. So, to my mind, what I'm saying is, I like the phrase corporate greed because it's honest. It says exactly what a corporation is. It's greed-based. It's all about the bottom line. I mean, there was a day, Henry Ford was asked once, why do you pay your employees so much? He says, if I don't, who will buy my cars? I worked for a company called SGS Tool. Every quarter, they came down, they showed us the numbers. They showed us the money flow chart. They showed us, the metrics on it. And I was just, a grinder. I was nobody important. They had profit sharing. They wanted every employee in that company to know, number one, that they were a valued member. Number two, what was going on with the money. There's not a lot of people who will run a business like SGS Tool was run, and I had even heard it said of the owner that he, for as long as he could draw breath, would never sell the company for a profit. Because he had that Henry Ford idea, that the idea of running a business is to inspire wealth for all, for everybody involved, not to exploit the worker. Corporations exist to exploit the worker. It's all about the bottom line. They have been given personhood in the United States, but they are a soulless entity. They can't feel. They can't have concern. Even Noam Chomsky had commented once about, somebody had asked him about the charities. He's like, yeah, they do the charity thing, but that's to affect their bottom line and to affect what I understand on a sheet is on their money flow sheet is goodwill. I mean, goodwill is literally something that is part of their accounting. Now, if you've got an organization that has goodwill as an entry in their accounting, then you know that's the only reason that they will ever do anything kind or good. The analogy I like to use is vampires. A lot of these vampire movies, and well, don't get me started on that aspect of modern culture, but it's, and how silly I think it is, but none of them, only one movie that I'm aware of has ever addressed the fact that if you had something like a vampire, they would eventually spread to the point to where they would outnumber the humans and they'd have nothing to feed on. And eventually they'd have to feed on each other. This is the perfect model for what a corporation is. A vampire is a soulless entity that is highly intelligent and has a lot of ability and feeds insatiably. A corporation is the same thing. And just like the movie Daybreakers, I think it was called Daybreakers, there's a crisis when you realize that the resources are limited. And that is the consciousness that's coming about. And that's why more people are aware of corporate greed. Matter of fact, I might go so far as to say corporate greed is redundant if you understand what a corporation is. So, capitalism was never intended for corporations. But in the real world, you can't separate them. Also, to your point about this always being here, and who is critical of it, Marxists, I don't understand how anyone who's reasonably intelligent today cannot be a Marxist, because this is textbook Marxism. I don't agree with everything about Marx, and I'm far from being an expert, but my understanding about how the middle class is being squeezed out and there'd be a revolution, and that's what we're going through now. The part I don't understand comes later when he says government becomes eliminated. That's off topic, but that would be a great discussion to have. But I just really felt, Nick, that that your criticism might have been a bit overstated. But that's just my opinion. The sad thing is, and it caused me to consider this. If Americans were asked, you have a choice. Gas prices at $3.50 a gallon, and we keep blowing up small children in the desert and kicking down doors and rummaging through people's homes because we're America and we can do that, versus not blowing small children up, but gas is now $7 a gallon. Because that's really, I've oversimplified it, but I think that's really the choice that we're faced with in how America's economic policy works. Most Americans, if you ask them directly, would say, well, I would rather have $7 gas prices than blowing children up in the desert. But I think that there's a very, maybe too large proportion of society that would say, well, those are just brown-skinned people who are on the other side of the planet that I will never meet. I would rather have the 350 because, you know what, that's just the way the world works. And this is what I think is changing. I think there is consciousness coming into this. I believe, and I don't want to get off on a tangent about this, I mean, if you think you saw a lot of novelty in 2011, just wait till 2012. That's where you're really going to see even more change and even more consciousness about these things. So I want to wrap this up because I have a tendency to, I've in what I've said already, there's probably 10, 11 things I could have just gone off on for 20 minutes. I do want to thank you again, Nick, because as I was learning tarot and I'm getting more confident with it every day, I just wanted to tell you that you are an inspiration to me. There are other people who are an inspiration to me, like Sin Lu, Spiritualist Catherine, and some friends, Patricia Walsh, other people who just... when I started, I made this terrible error of saying, well, gee, I'm not as good as they are. I'm not like them. And, you definitely, were an inspiration to me, number one. But number two, you also, let me know, in the free read that I got, the quick read that you do, you let me know that, I can progress with this. But now I'm at this really wonderful place where I realized, there's being as good as someone, and there's being like someone. And I don't think anymore that it's about being as good as anybody else. It's about finding your style. And so I don't speak very quickly. You can, you flow very well. That doesn't mean that I have to speak like you or speak like anybody else. And I know that now. I'm to a point to where I'm coming into my style, and I'm really enjoying it a lot more. And just having all these examples, because to find your style, you have to look at this guy and say, what do I like about how he does it, and what don't I like, or what can I take from this and that. Then you look at somebody else's deal. Well, what are they doing, and what can I do similar, and what don't I resonate with? And so I'm just at this really wonderful point in my development now, and thanks to you and so many other people who put really good examples, and sincere examples. And there have been so many that I've had to reject because they were just about selling reads more than about having integrity in what they do. So I just wanted to thank you for that, let you know that I am coming along, finding my style, and I think for the first time in a long time I'm very, much more secure with this. I want to make sure I get this right, because you Brits, I know if I do this wrong, you Brits take it as an insult. But peace, man, not the other way around. Okay. Oh, and one final thing. I respect you a lot, and I like your sense of humor and all that. But you say you're a trans deist, and I'm confused about that. Is that like pre-op or post-op? Exactly how does that work? Okay, peace, man.